The unexpected encounter. The harsh wind howled across the barren landscape, whipping snow and ice into a frenzy that obscured everything beyond a few feet. In the midst of this unforgiving wilderness stood a solitary cabin, its weathered wooden walls a stark contrast to the pristine white surroundings. Inside, Jack Morrison sat in a worn armchair, a half-empty bottle of whiskey on the table beside him, staring into the crackling fire as if it held the answers to questions he'd long since stopped asking. Jack had once been the pride of Earth's space fleet, a decorated pilot with nerves of steel and reflexes that seemed almost superhuman. But that was before the Battle of Proxima Centauri, before he'd watch helplessly as his entire squadron was wiped out by an enemy they'd never even seen coming. Now he was just another burnout, seeking solace in isolation and alcohol, trying to forget the weight of lives lost and the crushing guilt of survival. A sudden tremor shook the cabin, rattling the windows and sending dust cascading from the rafters. Jack's hand instinctively went to the blaster at his hip, a relic from his military days that he'd never quite been able to part with. His eyes, once glazed with alcohol-induced apathy, now sharpened with the focus of a soldier sensing danger. As quickly as it had come, the tremor subsided, leaving an eerie silence in its wake. Jack moved to the window, peering out into the swirling snowstorm. At first, he saw nothing but the endless white, but then a flicker of light, a strange, pulsating glow that seemed to cut through the blizzard like a beacon. Against his better judgment, Jack found himself pulling on his heavy coat and stepping out into the storm. The biting cold sobered him quickly as he trudged through knee-deep snow towards the source of the light. As he drew closer, the outline of a ship began to take shape, sleek, alien, and unmistakably not of human origin. Jack's heart raced, memories of the war flooding back. His hand tightened on his blaster as he approached the downed vessel. A hatch on its side hissed open, releasing a cloud of steam into the frigid air. Jack raised his weapon, ready for anything, or so he thought. What emerged from the ship, however, was the last thing he expected. A slender, humanoid figure stumbled out, cradling something in its arms. As it drew closer, Jack could make out more details: iridescent blue skin that seemed to shimmer even in the dim light, large, almond-shaped eyes that glowed with an inner light, and long, flowing hair that moved as if suspended in water. "Please," the alien said, its voice melodious yet filled with desperation. "Help us." It was then that Jack realized what the alien was holding. A child, small and fragile-looking, its skin a paler shade of blue than its mother. The child's eyes were closed, its tiny chest rising and falling with shallow breaths. Jack stood frozen, his blaster still raised, as the alien stumbled towards him. Years of military training warred with something else, a long-buried sense of compassion that he thought he'd lost in the war. "Who are you?" Jack demanded, his voice hoarse from disuse. "What are you doing here?" The alien fell to its knees in the snow, still clutching the child protectively. "My name is Zara," she said. "This is my son, Nexus. We've traveled across galaxies, fleeing a war that threatens to consume everything. You're our last hope." Jack's mind reeled. The last thing he wanted was to get involved in another conflict, especially not an alien one. He'd seen enough war to last several lifetimes. And yet, something in Zara's eyes, in the way she held her child, stirred something within him. "Look," Jack said, lowering his blaster but not holstering it. "I don't know what kind of trouble you're in, but I'm not the guy you want. I can't help you." Zara's eyes, a swirling mix of silver and violet, locked onto his. "You're Jack Morrison," she said, her voice gaining strength. "The hero of the Battle of Proxima Centauri. The man who single-handedly held the line against overwhelming odds." Jack flinched at the mention of that cursed battle. "That man is dead," he growled. "He died on that battlefield along with everyone else." A sad smile played at Zara's lips. "No, Jack Morrison. He's standing right here, drowning in guilt and self-loathing, but very much alive. And right now, He's the only thing standing between my son and those who would destroy him, and with him, the last hope for peace in our galaxy. As if on cue, a distant rumble echoed across the sky. Jack's trained ears recognized it immediately, the sound of ships entering the atmosphere. His eyes widened as he realized the implications. Whoever was after Zara and her child, they were here. In that moment, Jack made a decision that would change the course of not just his life, but potentially the fate of two civilizations. With a muttered curse, he holstered his blaster and reached down to help Zara to her feet. "Come on," he said gruffly. "We need to get inside before they spot us." Relief flooded Zara's features as she stumbled to her feet, still cradling Nexus protectively. As they made their way back to the cabin, the wind howling around them, Jack couldn't shake the feeling that he'd just signed up for something far bigger than a simple rescue. Once inside, Jack quickly secured the cabin, activating all defense systems that he'd maintained more out of habit than any real expectation of use. As Zara settled on the worn couch, Nexus still held close, Jack paced the room, his mind racing. "All right," he said finally, turning to face the alien woman. "You've got about 5 minutes to explain what the hell is going on before I change my mind and turn you both over to whoever's chasing you." Zara nodded, her eyes never leaving Jack's face. "Our world, Australia, has been at war for generations," she began, her voice low and urgent. "Not with external enemies, but with ourselves. Two factions, the Luminaries and the Shadowkin, locked in an endless struggle for control of our planet's resources and the direction of our civilization's future." As Zara spoke, Jack found himself drawn into the tale of a world torn apart by ideology and greed. The Luminaries, seeking to push the boundaries of science and exploration, believing that their destiny lay among the stars. The Shadowkin, determined to focus inward, to perfect their own world and society before venturing out into the galaxy. But Nexus, Zara continued, looking down at her sleeping child with a mixture of love and fear. Nexus is different. He was born with abilities that neither faction has seen before, abilities that could either bring our people together or tear us apart forever. Jack's eyes narrowed. What kind of abilities? Before Zara could answer, Nexus stirred in her arms. The child's eyes opened, revealing irises that swirled with colors Jack had never seen before. Suddenly, every electronic device in the cabin came to life, lights flickering, the old radio in the corner crackling with static, even Jack's long-dead datapad lighting up on the table. "He can interface with technology in ways we've never seen," Zara explained as Nexus closed his eyes again, the devices around them falling silent. "But it's more than that. He seems to be able to influence minds, to bridge the gap between organic and artificial intelligence. The Luminaries believe he's the key to unlocking the secrets of the universe. The Shadowkin, they fear him. They believe he'll bring about the end of our civilization as we know it." Jack ran a hand through his graying hair, feeling the weight of the situation settling onto his shoulders. "And let me guess, both sides are willing to do whatever it takes to get their hands on him." Zara nodded sullenly. "Which is why we ran. I couldn't let either side use my son as a weapon. He deserves a chance to grow, to choose his own path." The distant rumble of engines grew louder, and Jack moved to the window, peering out into the storm. Dark shapes were moving through the swirling snow, sleek ships that looked nothing like the clunky human vessels he was used to. "Well," Jack said, his voice grim as he turned back to Zara and Nexus, "looks like you're going to get your wish. Because right now, the only path any of us have is the one that keeps us alive and out of their hands." As the alien ships drew closer, their searchlights cutting through the blizzard, Jack felt a familiar sensation coursing through his veins. It was the rush of adrenaline, the clarity of purpose that he'd thought he'd lost forever. For the first time in years, he felt truly alive. "I must be out of my damn mind," Jack muttered, checking the charge on his blaster. But as he looked at Zara and Nexus, at the hope and trust in their eyes, he knew there was no turning back. Whatever came next, he was in this fight to the end. The battle of Proxima Centauri had broken him, had stripped away everything he thought he was. But maybe, just maybe, this impossible mission, protecting an alien mother and her extraordinary child, was his chance at redemption. A chance to be the hero he'd once believed himself to be. As the first explosion rocked the cabin, Jack's lips curved into a grim smile. "All right, kid," he said to Nexus, who was now wide awake and watching him with those impossible eyes. "Let's show these bastards what happens when they pick a fight with humanity." And with that, the unlikely trio prepared to face whatever the galaxy threw at them, united in their determination to survive and perhaps to change the course of two civilizations forever. Echoes of humanity. The old military transport rumbled across the desolate landscape, its camouflage paintwork a patchwork of rust and faded glory. Inside, Jack Morrison gripped the controls with white-knuckled intensity, his eyes constantly scanning the horizon for signs of pursuit. Beside him, Zara sat rigid, her alien features set in a mask of determination as she cradled the sleeping Nexus. "We're running out of fuel," Jack grunted, breaking the tense silence that had fallen since their narrow escape from the cabin. "There's an old refueling station about 50 clicks west. It's risky, but we don't have much choice." Zara nodded, her luminescent eyes reflecting the harsh glare of the dashboard. "Your kind never ceases to amaze me, Jack Morrison. In the face of impossible odds, you push forward, relentless." Jack snorted, a bitter smile twisting his lips. "Yeah, well, sometimes being too dumb to quit is all we've got going for us." As they approached the refueling station, a dilapidated collection of prefab structures huddled against the unforgiving wilderness, Jack felt a familiar prickle at the back of his neck. Years of combat experience had honed his instincts to a razor's edge, and right now, every fiber of his being was screaming that they were walking into a trap. "Stay here," he ordered Zara, powering down the transport behind a low ridge. "If I'm not back in 10 minutes, take the transport and run. Head for the coordinates I gave you earlier." Before Zara could protest, Jack was out of the vehicle, his blaster drawn and ready. He moved with the fluid grace of a predator, years melting away as muscle memory took over. As he crept closer to the station, a flicker of movement caught his eye, a shadow where no shadow should be. In one fluid motion, Jack rolled behind a rusted-out storage container, blaster fire sizzling through the air where he'd been standing a heartbeat before. The acrid smell of ozone filled his nostrils as he returned fire, his shots precise and measured. Well," a familiar voice called out, dripping with sarcasm. "If it isn't the great Jack Morrison, back from the dead." Jack's blood ran cold as he recognized the speaker. "Vex," he spat, memories of betrayal and loss flooding back. "Should have known you'd be mixed up in this mess." Vex Morrow had been Jack's second-in-command during the Battle of Proxima Centauri, the only other survivor of that ill-fated mission. But while Jack had retreated into isolation, Vex had embraced the darker side of human nature, becoming a mercenary willing to sell his skills to the highest bidder, human or alien. "Come on out, Jack," Vex called, his voice echoing off the metal structures. "Let's talk about this like civilized folk. I'm sure we can come to an arrangement that benefits everyone." Jack's mind raced, trying to calculate the odds. Vex was good, damn good, but he had one critical weakness, his ego. "You know me better than that, Vex," Jack shouted back, inching towards a better vantage point. "I never was much for talking." With that, Jack burst from cover, unleashing a barrage of blaster fire that forced Vex and his mercenaries to scatter. In the chaos, Jack managed to reach the main fuel depot, quickly assessing the ancient but still functional equipment. As the firefight intensified, Jack found himself falling back into old patterns, the years of rust and regret falling away with each calculated move. He was outnumbered and outgunned, but this was his element, the desperate last stand, the impossible odds. Suddenly, a high-pitched whine filled the air, rising in intensity until it was almost unbearable. Jack risked a glance towards the transport and saw Nexus standing atop it, his small form silhouetted against the grey sky. The child's eyes glowed with an otherworldly light, and all around the station, every piece of technology began to spark and sputter. Vex and his mercenaries cried out in confusion as their weapons malfunctioned, complex targeting systems reduced to useless hunks of metal. Jack seized the moment, closing the distance between himself and Vex in a few long strides. The two men grappled, years of shared history and pent-up resentment fueling their battle. "You don't understand what you're protecting, Jack," Vex grunted, struggling to gain the upper hand. "That kid could change everything, for humanity, for the whole damn galaxy." Jack headbutted Vex, sending the mercenary stumbling backward. "Maybe so," he growled, "but it'll be his choice, not yours or mine or anyone else's." With a final decisive blow, Jack knocked Vex unconscious. As the mercenary crumpled to the ground, Jack became aware of the eerie silence that had fallen over the station. He turned to see Zara approaching, Nexus cradled in her arms once more, the child's eyes now closed in exhaustion. "We need to move," Jack said, already heading for the fuel pumps. "It won't take long for word of this to spread." As they refueled the transport, Zara watched Jack with a mixture of awe and concern. "Your friend," she said hesitantly. He spoke as if he knew about Nexus, about his potential. Jack nodded grimly, his jaw set in a hard line. Vex always did have his fingers in too many pies. If he knows, it means this goes deeper than just your people's civil war. There are forces at play here that span galaxies. Once the transport was fueled, they wasted no time in getting back on the road. As the refueling station faded into the distance, Jack couldn't shake the feeling that they'd just crossed a point of no return. The stakes had been raised, and the game had changed. "Where are we going?" Zara asked, her voice barely audible over the rumble of the engine. Jack's eyes remained fixed on the horizon, his expression unreadable. "I've got an old friend," he said after a long moment. "Someone who might be able to help us make sense of all this. But it means going somewhere I swore I'd never return to." As they drove on through the gathering dusk, the first stars beginning to twinkle in the darkening sky, Jack found himself reflecting on the strange turns his life had taken. He'd gone from decorated war hero to bitter recluse, and now he was possibly the only thing standing between an alien child and forces that threatened to reshape the very fabric of the galaxy. The old Jack Morrison, the hero of Proxima Centauri, might have balked at such a responsibility. But the man he was now, tempered by loss and hardened by isolation, understood that sometimes the most important battles were the ones you never saw coming. As Nexus stirred in his sleep, a soft blue glow emanating from his small form, Jack made a silent vow. Whatever it took, whatever the cost, he would see this through. Not for glory, not for redemption, but because it was the right thing to do. In protecting Zara and Nexus, he wasn't just safeguarding two lives. He was preserving the right of all beings, human and alien alike, to chart their own course among the stars. The transport sped on through the night, carrying its unlikely passengers towards a destiny none of them could have imagined. And somewhere in the vast expanse of space, forces beyond their comprehension were aligning, setting the stage for a conflict that would determine the fate of not just two civilizations, but the entire cosmos. As the first light of dawn broke over the horizon, Jack allowed himself a grim smile. Whatever lay ahead, he was ready. The galaxy had no idea what it was in for when humanity decided to take a stand. The Nexus Protocol, the sprawling metropolis of Neo-Shanghai, loomed before them, a dizzying array of neon-lit skyscrapers and holographic billboards that stretched as far as the eye could see. Jack maneuvered the transport through the chaotic traffic, his eyes constantly darting to the rearview mirrors, watching for any signs of pursuit. "Your cities," Zara breathed, her luminescent eyes wide with wonder. "They're so alive." Jack grunted, his focus on navigating the treacherous lanes. "Yeah, well, don't let the shiny exterior fool you. This place has teeth, and it bites hard." As they delved deeper into the city's underbelly, the gleaming facades gave way to gritty streets and flickering lights. Jack pulled the transport into a narrow alley, killing the engine and turning to face his passengers. "Listen up," he said, his voice low and urgent. "The person we're meeting, she's not exactly on the right side of the law, but she's the best hacker this side of the Andromeda Galaxy, and right now, we need information more than we need to play by the rules." Zara nodded, her grit on Nexus tightening slightly. The child had been unusually quiet since their encounter at the refueling station, his otherworldly eyes distant and unfocused. They made their way through a maze of back alleys, Jack leading them with the confidence of someone intimately familiar with the urban labyrinth. Finally, they arrived at a nondescript door, its surface marred by graffiti in a dozen different languages, some human, some decidedly not. Jack rapped out a complex pattern on the door. After a moment, it slid open with a pneumatic hiss, revealing a dimly lit interior crammed with monitors and holo-displays. Well, a husky voice called from the shadows. "If it isn't the ghost of Jack Morrison." A figure emerged from behind a bank of servers, a woman with close-cropped hair dyed in swirling patterns of electric blue and silver. Cybernetic implants gleamed at her temples, and her eyes had the telltale sheen of high-end optical enhancements. "Hello, Nova," Jack said, a hint of warmth creeping into his gruff tone. "Been a while." Nova's augmented gaze swept over Zara and Nexus, her eyebrows rising slightly. "Interesting company you're keeping these days, Jack. I'm guessing this isn't a social call." As Jack explained their situation, Nova's expression grew increasingly grave. Her fingers danced over holographic interfaces, pulling up streams of data faster than the human eye could follow. "You've stepped in it this time, old friend," she muttered, her eyes never leaving the screens. "You're alien refugees. They're at the center of something big, like galaxy reshaping big." With a gesture, Nova expanded one of the holo displays, revealing a complex web of connections linking various factions, human, alien, and some that defied easy classification. "It's called the Nexus Protocol," she explained. "A theoretical method for linking organic consciousness with the fundamental forces of the universe. Imagine being able to manipulate reality itself with nothing but the power of your mind." Jack's blood ran cold as he glanced at Nexus, the child's eyes now fixed on the swirling data displays with unnerving intensity. Nova continued, her voice hushed with a mixture of awe and fear. "Every major power in the known galaxy is after this technology. The luminaries, the Shadowkin, Earth's own shadowy agencies. Hell, even some extra-dimensional entities we barely understand. And they all think Nexus is the key," Jack finished, the pieces falling into place. Nova nodded grimly. "Exactly. That kid isn't just special, Jack. He's potentially the most powerful being in the universe." As if on cue, Nexus raised a small hand towards the holo displays. The streams of data began to shift and swirl, coalescing into patterns of breathtaking complexity. Equations and theorems that had puzzled the greatest minds in the galaxy resolved themselves in seconds. "By all the stars," Zara whispered, her voice trembling with a mixture of pride and terror. Nova's eyes widened as she watched her systems reconfigure themselves, advancing years beyond current technology in a matter of moments. "This is impossible," she breathed. Jack, however, was already moving. He scooped up Nexus, breaking the child's connection to the systems. "We need to go," he barked. "Nova, can you?" His words were cut off by the sudden wail of alarms. Nova's fingers flew over her interfaces, her face pale. "Multiple hostile forces converging on our location," she reported. "Looks like your little light show didn't go unnoticed." Jack's mind raced, assessing their options. They were outnumbered, outgunned, and cornered in the heart of one of the most densely populated cities on Earth. The odds were overwhelming. But then when had that ever stopped him before? "Nova," he said, a dangerous glint in his eye, "how'd you like to stick it to every major power in the galaxy all at once?" A slow, feral grin spread across Nova's face. "Jack Morrison, I thought you'd never ask." What followed was a symphony of chaos orchestrated by a master conductor. Nova's fingers danced across her interfaces, unleashing digital hellfire upon their pursuers. Security systems went haywire, autonomous vehicles veered off course, and the city's vast network of holoads began broadcasting mind-bending images pulled straight from Nexus's subconscious. As they fought their way through the streets of Neo-Shanghai, Jack found himself marveling at the unlikely team they'd assembled. A washed-up war hero, an alien refugee, a child with the power to reshape reality, and a cyberpunk hacker with a grudge against the powers that be. They commandeered a maglev train, Nova's hacking skills clearing their path as they shot through the city at breakneck speeds. Zara proved to be a quick study with Earth weapons, providing covering fire as Jack engaged in close-quarters combat with waves of mercenaries and government agents. And through it all, Nexus remained at the center, his powers growing more extraordinary with each passing moment. He didn't just interface with technology now, he seemed to bend the very fabric of reality around him, creating localized fields of altered physics that sent their enemies stumbling in confusion. As they neared the city limits, their pursuers closing in from all sides, Jack made a decision that would alter the course of galactic history. "Nova," he shouted over the din of battle, "initiate the Nexus protocol." Nova's eyes widened in shock. "Jack, that's insane. We don't know what it'll do." But Jack's gaze was fixed on Nexus, on the swirling cosmos he saw reflected in the child's eyes. "Sometimes," he said softly, "you've got to take a leap of faith." With a nod of understanding, Nova entered the final command sequence. The world around them seemed to hold its breath for a moment, and then reality itself began to warp and shift. The boundaries between mind and matter, between the physical and the digital, blurred and dissolved. Jack felt his consciousness expanding, connecting with Zara, with Nova, with every living being in a cascading web of shared experience. And at the center of it all was Nexus, his small form radiating with power beyond comprehension. Through the child's eyes, Jack saw the true nature of the universe, not a collection of separate entities locked in eternal conflict, but a single interconnected whole, each part essential to the grand tapestry of existence. As quickly as it had begun, the experience faded, leaving them gasping and forever changed. Their pursuers stood frozen, weapons forgotten as they grappled with the profound revelations they'd just experienced. In that moment of stunned silence, Jack made his move. With Nova's help, they commandeered a sleek spacecraft, blasting out of Neo-Shanghai's atmosphere and into the star-studded expanse of space. As Earth receded behind them, Jack felt a weight lift from his shoulders. They weren't out of danger, far from it. But for the first time in years, he felt a sense of true purpose, of being part of something greater than himself. Zara approached, Nexus sleeping peacefully in her arms. "Where do we go now?" she asked, her voice filled with a mixture of hope and uncertainty. Jack's gaze was fixed on the starfield before them, a universe of possibilities stretching out to infinity. "Wherever we're needed," he said softly. "There's a whole galaxy out there that just got a glimpse of what unity looks like. I reckon they might need some help figuring out what to do with that knowledge." As they plotted a course for the unknown, Jack allowed himself a small smile. Humanity had always dreamed of reaching for the stars, of making its mark on the cosmos. But perhaps their true destiny wasn't conquest or colonization, but something far greater, to be the bridge between worlds, the catalyst for a new era of galactic cooperation. Whatever challenges lay ahead, Jack knew one thing for certain: with Nexus's power, Zara's wisdom, Nova's ingenuity, and his own indomitable human spirit, they were ready to face them head-on. The adventure was just beginning, and the universe would never be the same. Echoes of eternity. The sleek spacecraft, christened Starwaver by Nova, glided through the shimmering expanse of hyperspace. Inside the cockpit, Jack Morrison's weathered hands danced over the controls with practiced ease, his eyes constantly scanning the readouts for any sign of pursuit. Approaching the epsilon void, he announced, his voice gruff but tinged with an undercurrent of excitement. Everyone better hold on to something. This is where things get interesting. Zara leaned forward, her luminescent eyes wide with wonder, as she gazed out at the swirling maelstrom of color that marked the boundary of known space. The void, she breathed. I never thought I'd see it with my own eyes. Nova's voice crackled over the ship's intercom. Sensors are going haywire. Whatever's out there, it's not playing by the usual rules of physics. As if in response to her words, the Starweaver shuddered violently. Alarms blared as the ship was suddenly yanked out of hyperspace, tumbling end over end in a sea of impossible colors and shifting geometries. Nexus, Jack shouted, fighting with the controls. We could use a little help here, kid. In the ship's common area, Nexus stood perfectly still, his small form radiating an otherworldly glow. His eyes, normally a swirling mix of colors, had become bottomless pools of starlight. As the child raised his hands, reality itself seemed to bend around the Starweaver. The chaotic tumble smoothed out, the alarms falling silent as Nexus exerted his will upon the very fabric of space-time. Through the viewports, they watched in awe as the void parted before them, revealing a hidden pocket of calm in the heart of the cosmic storm. As the Starweaver glided into this oasis of tranquility, a massive structure came into view. A sprawling space station that seemed to be built from fragments of a dozen different worlds and technologies. By all the stars, Zara gasped. It's the Nexus hub. I thought it was just a legend. Jack's eyes narrowed as he studied the station. Care to fill in the rest of the class? Zara's voice was hushed with reverence. It's said to be a gathering place for beings from across the multiverse. A neutral ground where ideas and technologies from countless realities can be shared and studied. As they approached the hub, a soft chime echoed through the ship. A holographic figure materialized in the center of the cockpit, a being of pure energy, its form constantly shifting and flowing. Greetings, travelers, the figure said, its voice a harmonious blend of tones. We've been expecting you. Jack's hand instinctively went to his blaster. That's never a good sign. The energy being's form rippled in what might have been amusement. Peace, Jack Morrison. We mean you no harm. The child you protect has long been prophesied in the annals of the hub. His coming marks the dawn of a new age for all sentient life. Before Jack could respond, Nexus stepped forward, his eyes locked on the holographic figure. When he spoke, his voice resonated with power far beyond his years. You're the archivists, Nexus said, the guardians of knowledge across the multiverse. The energy being's form pulsed with approval. Indeed, young one. We've watched your journey with great interest. The choice you made in Neo-Shanghai, to unite rather than divide, has set in motion events that will reshape the very foundations of reality. As the Starweaver docked with the Nexus hub, Jack felt a familiar tension coiling in his gut. He'd been in enough combat situations to know he was walking into something big, and this felt bigger than anything he'd ever faced. The interior of the hub was a marvel of impossibilities. Gravity shifted and changed as they moved through corridors that seemed to fold in on themselves. Beings of every conceivable form, and some Jack's mind could barely comprehend, moved about with purpose, engaged in projects that defied description. They were led to a vast chamber at the heart of the hub. At its center stood a swirling vortex of pure information, the sum total of knowledge gathered from across the multiverse. The archivist's voice echoed around them. The Nexus protocol you activated was but the first step. Here, at the confluence of all realities, you'll complete what was begun. Nexus stepped forward, drawn to the vortex as if called by some unheard voice. As his small hand touched the swirling data, his form began to glow with increasing intensity. Jack, Zara cried out, her voice tinged with fear. What's happening to him? But Jack stood transfixed, watching as Nexus's consciousness expanded, merging with the vast repository of knowledge before them. In that moment, he understood that they stood at a crossroads of cosmic significance. Images flashed through Jack's mind, countless possible futures, branching out in an infinite web of potential. He saw worlds torn apart by war and greed, realities where the strong dominated the weak. But he also glimpsed futures of unimaginable beauty, civilizations that had transcended their differences, united in a common purpose of exploration and growth. And through it all, he saw Nexus, not as the child he appeared to be, but as a nexus point of possibility, a being capable of guiding the course of evolution itself. As Nexus withdrew his hand from the vortex, the chamber fell silent. When the boy turned to face them, his eyes held the wisdom of eons. "I understand now," Nexus said, his voice echoing with newfound power. "Why I was born, why you were all brought together. We stand at a precipice, a moment of choice that will determine the fate of not just our universe, but all universes." Jack stepped forward, his soldier's instincts warring with the profound sense of awe he felt. "What choice, kid? What are we facing?" Nexus's gaze seemed to pierce through Jack, seeing not just the man he was, but all the paths his life could have taken. The choice between isolation and unity, between fear and understanding. Every civilization reaches this point, this nexus of possibility. Most fail, retreating into conflict and eventual extinction. But some choose to reach beyond themselves, to embrace the infinite diversity of existence. Zora knelt beside her son, tears streaming down her face. "And that's what you can do. Help us make that choice." Nexus nodded solemnly. "I can show the way, but the choice must be made freely by every sentient being. That's where you come in, all of you. You'll be the emissaries, carrying this message of unity to the farthest reaches of the cosmos." Nova, who had been uncharacteristically quiet, finally spoke up. "Kid, no offense, but that sounds like a tall order. How are we supposed to convince entire civilizations to join hands and sing Kumbaya?" A smile tugged at Nexus' lips, a reminder that despite his vast knowledge, he was still, in many ways, a child. Not through force or coercion, but by example, by showing them what's possible when beings from different worlds come together. You've already begun in your journey here. Now you'll take that spark and ignite it across the stars. As the weight of their new mission settled upon them, Jack felt a familiar fire igniting in his soul. This was what he'd been searching for, he realized. Not redemption for past failures, but a chance to be part of something truly meaningful, truly universal. "Well," he said, a wry smile crossing his scared face, "I always did want to see the universe. Might as well do it while saving it, eh?" Zora's hand found his, squeezing gently. Nova cracked her knuckles, a mischievous glint in her cybernetic eyes. And Nexus stood before them, a bridge between worlds, the key to a future of infinite possibility. As they left the chamber, preparing to embark on a journey that would take them to the farthest reaches of existence, Jack felt a sense of purpose he'd thought long lost. The universe was vast and full of wonders, but also dangers beyond imagining. Yet, with this unlikely family by his side, he was ready to face whatever lay ahead. The Starweaver hummed to life, its systems now integrated with technology beyond human understanding. As they pulled away from the Nexus hub, setting course for the first of countless worlds that awaited them, Jack allowed himself a moment of reflection. He'd started this journey as a broken man, seeking only to lose himself in isolation. Now, he stood at the helm of a mission to unite the cosmos. It was a transformation he never could have imagined, yet one that felt inexplicably right. "All right, team," he said, his voice filled with determination. "Let's go make some history." And with that, the Starweaver leaped into hyperspace, carrying with it the hopes of not just one world or one species, but of all sentient life across the grand tapestry of existence. The true adventure, Jack realized, was only just beginning. The cosmic tapestry. The Starweaver emerged from hyperspace in a burst of prismatic light, its sleek form gliding into orbit around a world unlike any Jack had ever seen. The planet's surface was a constantly shifting mosaic of crystalline structures, each facet reflecting the light of twin suns in a dazzling display. "Welcome to Prismatica," Nexus announced, his young voice carrying the weight of ancient knowledge. "Home to the Luminae, a species of energy beings who exist in a state of perpetual metamorphosis." Jack's weathered hands danced over the ship's controls, his soldier's instincts on high alert despite the breathtaking view. "Sounds lovely, kid. But why here? What makes this our first stop on the grand Unite the Cosmos tour?" Zara stepped forward, her luminescent eyes wide with wonder as she gazed at the planet below. "The Luminae," she breathed. "I've heard whispers of them in the deepest archives of my people. They're said to be masters of light and perception, capable of seeing the underlying connections between all things." Nova's voice crackled over the intercom, tinged with her usual sardonic humor. "Great. So we're about to meet a bunch of New Age space hippies who can literally see our auras. This should be fun." As the Starweaver began its descent through Prismatica's iridescent atmosphere, Jack couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. Not with hostility, but with an intense curiosity that seemed to penetrate to his very core. They landed on a platform that seemed to materialize beneath them, the crystalline surface reshaping itself to perfectly cradle the ship. As the airlock hissed open, Jack instinctively reached for his blaster, only to find the weapon unresponsive. "Your implements of violence have no power here, Jack Morrison," a melodious voice echoed in his mind. "On Prismatica, we communicate through light and thought alone." Emerging from the ship, the crew found themselves surrounded by beings of pure radiance. The Luminae shifted and flowed like living auroras, their forms a riot of color and motion that was almost painful to look at directly. Nexus stepped forward, his small form glowing with an inner light that seemed to resonate with the Luminae. When he spoke, it was not with words, but with pulses of pure thought and emotion that washed over them all. Images flooded Jack's mind, the vastness of the cosmos, the intricate web of connections linking all sentient life, the looming threats that sought to unravel the very fabric of existence. He saw the role they were meant to play, not as conquerors or saviors, but as catalysts for a great awakening. The Nexus Protocol, one of the Luminae communicated, its thoughts tinged with a mixture of awe and trepidation. "We have long foreseen its activation, but to see it manifested in one so young." Zara stepped protectively closer to Nexus, her maternal instincts flaring. "My son is more than just a vessel for your prophecies," she said, her voice firm despite the otherworldly surroundings. "He's a child with hopes and fears of his own." The Luminae's light pulsed in what might have been approval. Indeed, it is that very duality, the cosmic and the personal, the infinite and the intimate, that makes him the ideal bridge between realities. As the Luminae led them deeper into their crystalline city, Jack found his perception of reality beginning to shift. The boundaries between self and other, between past and future, blurred and dissolved. He saw glimpses of alternate timelines, versions of himself that had made different choices, faced different challenges. In one, he was still the hero of Proxima Centauri, leading humanity's charge into the stars. In another, he had never left Earth, living a quiet life untouched by cosmic conflicts. But in every version, there was a common thread, a deep-seated need to protect, to stand against injustice, to fight for something greater than himself. "You see now," Nexus communicated, his thoughts intertwining with Jack's own. "Why you were chosen for this mission. Your experiences, your struggles, your very essence, they all prepare you for the role you must play." Nova, her cybernetic systems interfacing with the crystalline technology around them, let out a low whistle. "Hate to break up the existential love fest," she said, "but we've got company. Multiple ships entering the system, and they don't look friendly." The peaceful glow of Prismatica was suddenly shattered by the harsh glare of weapon systems powering up. Through the crystalline walls, they could see a fleet of sleek, predatory vessels descending from the upper atmosphere. "The Voidborn," one of the Luminae communicated, its light dimming with fear. "Servants of entropy, seeking to unravel the bonds between all things. They must have sensed the activation of the Nexus protocol. Jack's mind raced, assessing their options. They were outgunned and outnumbered, on unfamiliar terrain, with allies whose abilities he barely understood. It was, he realized with grim amusement, exactly the kind of situation he'd spent his entire military career preparing for. "All right," he growled, his voice cutting through the mental cacophony. "Nexus, I need you to work with the Lumine. See if you can use their perception abilities to find any weaknesses in the enemy fleet. Nova, get back to the Starwaver and prep for emergency takeoff. Zare, you're with me. We need to find a way to bolster the planet's defenses." As they sprang into action, Jack felt a familiar rush of adrenaline coursing through his veins. But this time it was tempered by something else, a sense of purpose that went beyond mere survival. They weren't just fighting for their own lives, but for the future of all sentient life in the cosmos. The battle that followed was unlike anything Jack had ever experienced. The Lumine's mastery of light and perception turned the very fabric of reality into a weapon. Beams of coherent thought lanced out, disrupting the Voidborn's neural networks. The crystalline surface of Prismatica shifted and flowed, creating impenetrable barriers one moment and opening yawning chasms the next. Nexus stood at the heart of it all, his small form a conduit for energies beyond comprehension. Through him, the disparate forces, human ingenuity, alien technology, and the fundamental forces of the universe itself were united into a single unstoppable whole. As the last of the Voidborn ships fell from the sky, disintegrating into motes of dark energy, a profound silence fell over Prismatica. The Lumine's light pulsed with a mixture of relief and gratitude, but Jack could sense an undercurrent of something else, a recognition that this was only the beginning. "You have proven yourselves worthy allies," the Lumine communicated. "But the threat you face goes beyond mere physical conflict. The Voidborn are but one manifestation of the entropy that seeks to unravel the cosmic tapestry." Nexus nodded solemnly, his eyes reflecting the swirling cosmos. "Our journey has only just begun," he said, his voice carrying the weight of newfound understanding. "There are other worlds, other realities, all teetering on the brink of chaos or enlightenment. We must reach them, show them the power of unity before it's too late." As they prepared to leave Prismatica, each member of the crew felt profoundly changed by their experience. Jack's cynicism had been tempered by a renewed sense of purpose. Zara's protective instincts had expanded to encompass not just her son, but all of creation. Nova's technological brilliance had been infused with a deeper appreciation for the organic and the mystical. And Nexus stood taller, his connection to the cosmic tapestry stronger than ever. He was still a child in many ways, but also something more, a nexus point of infinite possibility, the key to unlocking the true potential of all sentient life. As the Starweaver lifted off, setting course for the next world that needed their unique blend of skills and wisdom, Jack allowed himself a moment of reflection. He had started this journey as a broken man, seeking redemption for past failures. Now, he found himself at the forefront of a mission to reshape the very nature of existence. It was a daunting task, fraught with dangers he could scarcely imagine. But as he looked at his unlikely family, the alien refugee, the cybernetic hacker, and the child who held the fate of the cosmos in his small hands, Jack felt a sense of hope he hadn't experienced in years. "All right, crew," he said, a hint of his old commanding presence creeping into his voice. "Let's go weave ourselves a better universe." And with that, the Starwaver leaped into hyperspace, carrying with it the hopes and dreams of countless beings across the vast expanse of creation. The cosmic tapestry stretched out before them, waiting to be rewoven into a grand design of unity and enlightenment. The adventure, Jack realized with a mixture of excitement and trepidation, was only just beginning. And he wouldn't have it any other way.